Welcome to Backstories, the podcast where we dig deep into the untold tales behind the people, places, and moments that shape our world. Every month, we'll uncover the hidden narratives that inspire, surprise, and challenge us. So, grab your headphones and get ready to journey into the past, one backstory at a time.
I don't mean he's a big storyteller. I mean he has big stories. So this is Joe. Dispatches from a teen opera queen.
Hello. I grew up in Skaggsville. I had a father that tried desperately to bond with me in every conceivable way except successful ones. My brother was more like a normal kid. My dad would try to rope me in with things where he got me into the Boy Scouts, and the other Boy Scouts threw me into the pit of a latrine. Dad decided I needed to be in Little League, and the first ball he ever pitched at me hit me in the eye and knocked me unconscious, so I went back to school with a giant black eye. And around this time, Julie Andrews did a show at Merriweather Post Pavilion, and my dad took me to that because he knew I had this weird fixation on Julie Andrews. And at the end of this show, he did what he did a lot of times, which is he snuck me backstage, took me backstage, got me all the way in, pretended to be some sort of person working on the show, which he always did. And suddenly I'm in Julie Andrews' dressing room. And I was so nervous, and I was like, Dad, it's Julie Andrews. And he goes, just go and talk to her. She's a perfectly wonderful person. And I went up to her and I said, oh, Miss Andrews, you're one of my biggest fans. And she looked me right in the eye with this just beautiful expression that you would totally expect from Mary Poppins, and got my hand in that way where women of a certain degree of kindness would hold your hand from both sides. And she looked me right in the eye and she goes, I am one of your biggest fans. And after that, that was a trigger for my dad where he was like, I think I know what angle to go in. And it helped that my dad was a long-running operatic supernumerary with the Washington Opera at the center that I will not name until they fix the name. And he said, son, we're going to go down there and you're going to be a supernumerary with the opera. And I'm like, what's a supernumerary? He goes, we'll find out. Drives me down to D.C., it is 1981, I'm 13, and don't know what he's doing. We get in there, of course, the unnamed art center there is sort of overwhelming and red and modernistic and all that, but we go in, they're having a simultaneous casting call and sort of tryouts for these supernumeraries, and supernumeraries are just extras. They just sound glamorous because it's the opera. And the opera that they're casting for is La Boheme. It's conducted by Giancarlo Menotti, the composer who did Amal and the Night Visitors and Help the Globalinks, a whole bunch of kind of weird modern opera. Very sweet guy, Italian. Italian to the degree he never put his arms into the sleeves of his coat. He just wore it like a cape and just gestured a lot. And I saw this guy and I'm like, I am in love with whatever he's doing. But we all go through the casting call and people are getting cast, and I'm a little traumatized because I'm leaning over to my dad and I'm like, Dad, that man is wearing clogs. Clogs on a man. And he goes, you're allowed to wear clogs when you're in the opera, son. But they finally get around, they pick me out, and they're like, we're going to cast you. And they want to test me out in a scene from La Boheme's Act 2 where a paperboy gets into a fight. And because I was a bullied child, I had a idiosyncratic way of fighting that was not maybe as stage-worthy as what they were looking for. So they have somebody playing on the piano, the little chorister that's going to be in a fight with me comes up, and I believe it was one of the leads is there, and it's like, okay, now fight. Well, I'm like this. And it is not operatic big, it's what is wrong with that kid big. And he goes, let's try it again. And I'm like, okay, here goes, and cue, and and he goes, no. And he's like, no, send him back. And I go back and I go to the other end of this rehearsal room 4 at the Kennedy Center. Oh, I said the name. The John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Not to take any positions or anything, but I'm right. But I go off to the side, and I am so upset that I don't get to have this fight that I'm trying not to cry. And I have that real distinct trying not to cry face where I'm like, okay, it's okay. Well, I don't know this, but Giancarlo Menotti and his assistant catch sight of this, and he gestures from under his loosely draped, beautiful tweed coat, and the assistant is like, boy, come over here. And he brings me over, and I'm talking to Menotti, and I'm like, oh, this is really exciting. He's a famous composer. And he goes, you're wrong for this. You're not good at fighting. And I'm like, I know, I try really hard. He goes, no, I'm going to give you something to do. And what he did, because he felt kind of bad for me, but he knew that I had the essence of drama in me, was he cast me in every act in that entire opera and gave me a cape. And man, backstage, me and that, I could not round a corner without kind of whipping it around and whipping it this way. During our rehearsals, we were into the dress rehearsals, and Halloween came up, and I got with all the kids in the chorus, and we were complaining that we were not able to trick or treat. And I said, you know what we could do? Let's go over to the building next door and trick or treat. And that's how we snuck into the Watergate and went trick or treating in our full costumes from the Washington Opera, which were mostly on loan from the Met. And most of the people in the Watergate were really not sure how to react to a bunch of Parisian street urchins in full costumes. So we got a lot of weird gifts like candy bars, pieces of cake, money. And when we got back to the stage door, we were in a little bit of trouble because you're really not supposed to sneak out of the unnamed center there and go to the Watergate to trick or treat, but we did. I got through that opera. It was just such a joyous experience because I was so, as a kid, I was just kind of put upon and bullied and nobody knew where my place was. But after that, I knew where my place was. It was opera. Not the proper kind because I couldn't sing, and I would usually get in trouble because the non-singing people are not supposed to sing, but I couldn't control myself. So during some of the rehearsals, there'd be this great line, and the kids would start to sing, and all the little fancy kids from the chorus were singing their bits. And there's one where one little kid, the toy seller, Parpignol, has come out, and the little kid goes, "Voila la tromba il cavallin." Except in the rehearsals, I'm kind of singing along, and he cut the kid, but I kept singing. Oh. And Menotti just looks at me from under his beautiful not-attached coat and is like, oh. But I finished the run of that opera, and I became very full of myself because I was 13, a teen opera queen. I went back to school, and everybody's like, look at this guy. And I'm like, I know. Do I have that certain Italian style? Am I showing it off? And I started taking the double knit sport coat that my mom bought me for my best friend's bar mitzvah, and I would wear it to school, draped over my shoulders, and every question the teacher asked, I was like, I got very stereotypically Italian to the point that I finally got thrown into the principal's office one day, and I'm sitting there in my double knit sport coat with my hand gestures, and the assistant principal called my mom, and this was a familiar call because I was in that office a lot, and said, Mrs. Wall, Joe is, I don't even know how to describe what he's doing. He's wearing a jacket without having his hands in the sleeves, and he's acting all Italian, and he says that he's friends with the composer Giancarlo Menotti. And my mom on the other end of the line, and years later when we talked about this, she said this was possibly one of the happiest moments of her life, because instead of the usual call where it's, well, Joe has set the science room on fire. Joe has 18 lunches in his locker, and we have to call in a hazmat team. This time, my mom paused a minute, savored it, and she goes, Joe is friends with Giancarlo Menotti. He's in an opera right now with the Washington Opera at the Unnamed Arts Center. And she says there was like a little pause, and the assistant principal said, what? At which point they said, well, you got to knock off the Italian stuff, because for one thing, it's coming off Eastern European. And still, if I try to do Italian, that's how I come off. But I did that job. I worked with the Washington Opera for 20 years after that point. And anytime they called me for any opera, I would always take a part. I have been so many things. I have had so many things glued to my face. By the time I got to high school, everybody's like, weren't you in the drama club at high school? And I'm like, I get out on stage in front of 2,800 people in a beautiful art center full of like all the best technology. Do you think I really want to do Our Town on a ladder at Athelton High School? I mean, I don't want to sound snobby or anything. And if I had my coat over my shoulders, I would have been like, But I just, at that point, though, I kept up with Menotti, and not only that, I started writing to him and asking him for advice. Because I said, well, I want to do shows, but I don't want to do singing. He goes, well, just do operas where you say the things. And I'm like, well, I don't know, what will that lead to? I'll end up like in a bookstore telling stories 40 years from now. And it was such a kindness. Every opera that he ever conducted there, where he came in as the maestro and put it together, he would always remember me, and he knew I could manage my cues, I could manage my points, and I got all the best things. And one of the very last times I wrote to him, I was just like, I'm a little frustrated. This is I've graduated from college. I'm not sure what I'm doing with my life. And he says, just treat life like an opera. Just make everything big, even if nobody else knows. Just keep it to yourself, but just be big inside. And I did that, and it has paid off even to this point. I stopped doing opera when the dad bod caught up with me, and they only cast me as soldiers for a while. In fact, I'm working on a piece about that, because they cast me as soldiers for a while, and I had this long tradition of whenever we would have opening night, I would wear my lucky underwear, which were always red. And the last complaint I got from that, it was in Samson and Delilah, and the notes after the first show were, a note to the Philistine at stage left, because I was a Philistine soldier, lose the red underwear for the next show. You can see it all over the house. But I have taken from that, while I'm not doing opera now, I'm doing it internally, and I live it. My life's smaller now, but it's operatic inside. And that's it.